The camera keeps rolling. A man paces. He pauses. He steps behind a low wall in the shower, a blind spot on a surveillance feed. 25 minutes later, there's no man at all, just an empty bed and a missing prisoner. How do you vanish from a fortress? How do you disappear into daylight through a hole no one had seen coming? But he didn't walk out. He rode a rail, and someone built a road to freedom. Stick with us as we uncover the fugitive who defied the odds. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every chase has a different perspective. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, born in Sinaloa, cartel boss, fugitive, and folk legend. For decades, he built routes, contracts, and a subterranean logistics network that shipped drugs into the United States and beyond. Captured and recaptured, arrested in 2014, and held at Federal Social Readaptation Center number 1, commonly known as Altiplano. Guzman's story was never just about him. It was about a system of power and the men who profited from letting that power run. His 2001 escape from a Mexican prison became a cautionary tale for authorities. So when he was brought to Altiplano, a maximum security prison west of Mexico City, officials promised the public that he'd face a different fate. But promises and reality would not line up. Altiplano was supposed to be Mexico's most secure penitentiary. Stone walls, strict routines, cameras, and a reputation to match. And yet, within months, the ground outside one of its cells was being excavated. The entrance to the tunnel opened not in a jungle, but under an unfinished, half-built house in a nearby neighborhood. Satellite images and investigators would later show the structure had been in place months before the escape, evidence of planning, patience, and access to resources. Security should have covered every angle, but tunnels don't always announce themselves. They require money, manpower, and, critically, time. That time buys secrecy, and secrecy buys leverage. If the house was there months before, who knew? And who looked the other way? This would not be a crude crawl space. When authorities reached the subterranean shaft, they found planning and engineering. The tunnel that reached from that house to the shower area in Guzman's cell has been reported at approximately 1 mile, roughly 1.5 kilometers. It was dug deep, roughly 10 meters below ground at points. It was tall enough for a person to stand in some sections, about 1.5 to 1.7 meters high, and equipped with ventilation, electric lighting, and even a modified motorcycle running on rails, presumably used to move materials and possibly the man himself. Such a tunnel is not carved in a weekend. It is a project of skilled diggers with logistics, spoil removal, structural supports, air supply, electricity, all financed and all protected. It is also, investigators would later say, the kind of project that invites complicity. It was late. A security camera captured a tired man walking the small, familiar orbit of his cell. At one point, he steps toward the shower stall, noticeably off camera for an instant. And, in a manner the nation would replay for months, he is simply gone. The only viable escape route, the shower area in his cell. The shower was the only place not covered by direct camera angles. The investigators said Guzman used the shower to reach a vertical shaft, a ladder leading to the tunnel below. By the time prison staff noticed, they were looking at an empty cell. The hole had been patched from above. Prison logs later showed a dangerous delay. Guards had not issued an immediate alarm. 25 minutes passed before personnel realized he was missing. That delay, authorities said, was catastrophic. 25 minutes. Enough time to vanish down a mile of tunnel. Who failed to sound the alarm and why? When the authorities followed the trail, they found a tunnel that read like a blueprint for premeditation. The exit led to a half-built property on the outskirts of town. Inside the passage were lights, air ducts, an oxygen tank, wiring, and a motorized cart that ran on rails. Journalists and officials quoted an estimated construction cost in the millions of dollars. Officials did not mince words. The escape suggested institutional failure and a high-level collusion. Within days, investigators rounded up dozens of prison staff and contractors for questioning. A man with resources can vanish. A man with networks can hide. For 6 months, Mexico mounted a sprawling manhunt. Checkpoints, air searches, intelligence operations, and international alerts followed as Guzman slipped through the cracks and sometimes through the shadows of collusion. Authorities detained dozens of people in connection with the escape. Prison guards, administrators, and officials. The investigation suggested complicity at multiple levels. Top officials were not immune from suspicion. Some arrests were symbolic, meant to show action. Others led to charges. The message to many Mexicans: the state had been penetrated by money and intimidation. In the early hours of January 8, 2016, a joint intelligence operation culminated in a raid in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. The Mexican Navy's elite units moved on a safe house in a coastal city. Gunfire erupted. 5 cartel gunmen were killed in the firefight. Guzman fled through a series of escape passages, hijacked a car, and attempted to vanish again, but this time the net tightened. The operation, later described in Mexican briefings as highly coordinated and supported by international intelligence, ended with his capture on a highway near the town. The moment was cinematic. The man who had slipped underground reappeared amid the lights and sirens of a modern manhunt. Operation Black Swan, its planning and execution, will become a pivotal episode in the international effort to dismantle the Sinaloa operations. In January 2017, Mexican authorities extradited Guzman to the United States to face multiple indictments across jurisdictions. The Justice Department moved to try him in Brooklyn, where an enormous case compiled years of wiretaps, informant testimony, and seized evidence. In 2019, a jury in the Eastern District of New York found Guzman guilty on multiple counts, and the judge ordered a life sentence plus decades. The courtroom that once telegraphed the kingpin's reach now recorded a judicial end to one chapter of his story. This story is about steel and soil, but is also a story about people. The tunnel's concrete and wires tell of money and expertise. The names in court files and headlines point to greed, fear, and loyalty. But the deeper cost is borne by survivors and communities touched by cartel violence, families who lost loved ones, neighborhoods living under the shadow of trafficking, prison staff who were bribed or threatened. El Chapo's escape stripped away a kind of social contract. When institutions designed to enforce the law yield to bribery or incompetence, trust collapses. A tunnel is a physical route. The moral tunnel it illustrates, between law and impunity, runs far deeper. This episode challenges us to ask, how do we build systems that resist money and intimidation? How do we protect the vulnerable? Answering those questions is the unfinished work left by stories like this. El Chapo's life is now contained in a U.S. prison sentence, yet his story echoes. The tunnel that carried him to freedom was an engineering feat for escape and a cautionary monument to corruption. If you want to learn more, read court records, independent investigations, and reporting from international outlets. If this story gripped you, consider supporting organizations that help victims of organized crime and advocate for prison reform and anti-corruption measures. At Mysterious Crime Box, we tell these stories not to sensationalize, but to remember, to reflect, and to learn. If you believe in shining light on the darkest corners of our shared history, subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts below. Join us again here at the Mysterious Crime Box for more mysteries await inside the crime box.